Hello everyone and welcome to the Hobby Guard. In today's video I will be talking about why now, out of all times, with all the chaos that's going on around the world, now is the perfect time to actually focus on your hobbies more than ever. Even though it may seem like escapism, or it may seem like it's gonna be harder and harder to do things that seem to serve no purpose whatsoever, I want to make the argument, the case, that this is actually the most important time to focus on your hobbies. And I will, present my case. As I mentioned previously, I have a couple of reasons why I think this way, so I will share some experience, some personal lore with you all as I work, as usual, here on my Iron Hands fan art of the Keys of Hell that is gonna take me forever. So, anyways, without further ado, let me begin by telling you a quick story. Let me take you back to the year of 2019, as I was at an interesting time in my life. I was coming back to Mexico after having lived in Paraguay for a while, and I moved to Paraguay pursuing certain relationship that didn't quite work out in the end. And when I came to Mexico, I had no job really. I was making very little money at the time, because I had my YouTube channel, but it didn't quite have the numbers to support me. Not this YouTube channel, mind you, a different one from way back when, a martial arts YouTube channel in Spanish that I used to put a lot of effort into when I was younger, and I could get my teeth kicked in, sorry, for a living. But yeah, I guess it wasn't quite the living just yet, right? So I was in a sort of tough, tight economic position. I was in a tight spot, sorry, economically. I was in a tight spot, anemically and emotionally as well, because my I stayed at a family member's apartment for a couple of months while I got my bearings, because I did not have a plan to go back to Mexico. It was basically an overnight decision that I took, and there was no way back basically from that decision, so I just stuck with it, and it took me a while to get back on my feet. But I reconnected with a friend whom I had known since I was 6 or 7 years old, so from way back in the day. And this friend, he's a bit older than me, about 10 years older than me, I believe. And we have stayed in touch for a while I was being a nomad, living in different countries. But when we got back in touch, we just remembered how fun it was. We had actually lived together previously when I was 15. He stayed with me for a while. But when we got back in touch, we just remember how much we actually enjoyed each other's company, how much our friendship just made life so much more bearable. And this is at this point 10 years later than when we first lived together, because at this point I would have been 25. I would have just turned 25 actually. I turned 25 as soon as I went back to Mexico. But anyways, the point is, he convinced me. He's like, hey, well, you need a place to live. I need a good worker for my business, and I could use a friend, someone who to keep me company, motivate me, whatever. There's an extra room in my house. Why don't you hop in, and then we'll see what to do for rent, and we'll take care of it. Just move in with me. And it was his parents' house actually. But yeah, I took on that offer, and then we opened a business together, and I was doing side jobs for him as well in other stuff. And I learned a bunch with him. We learned a bunch together, arguably, and we worked very hard on our business. But then, if you recall, late 2019, early 2020, something happened in the world that switched things around quite a bit. Norgal's plague hit. Hold on, I just realized that the lightning on that metal plate is not quite gonna work on the shoulder here, because the light is coming from this angle. So yeah, I'll have to fix the lighting. Uh, but I guess I can keep going and I'll get there when I get there. But anyways, Norgal's plague hit the world, and one of the businesses that we were working together in, the one that we started, and I basically from the ground up, he came up with the idea and everything, and we him along with another friend of ours who I've known just like that long as well, since I was 7 or 6. It was a restaurant, this business, and it was a very cool concept. It was like a rock and roll kind of heavy metal restaurant in the one of the most dangerous towns in Mexico City. But anyways, the point is, when Norgal's plague hit, we had to close. Unfortunately, we just could not keep it open, and it moved to just a delivery only model of business. So there I was. I was at this point having some payments from YouTube, not too much, but once again, and I was also freelancing as well. So I did get some money now and then. I was voice acting. I was doing a couple different things. I was doing stunt work for like action shows and so on. Plus the YouTube stuff. But it was a hard time for everyone. If you'll recall, it was a very tough time. Family members unfortunately started passing away. Friends started passing away. I don't know why. It just has so happened that a lot of people that I really loved, that had nothing to do with each other, just all died in that first couple of years. But the thing that really stuck to me was how much of a blast my friend and I have. My friend's called Bledov. That's his title. I'll definitely introduce you guys to him on the channels at some time, because he's hit the mic. He's an outstanding person. But honestly, Bledov and I, even though with everything that was going on in the world, all this struggle, all the strife that we were going through, all the depression, sadness, and time, and obviously we were both hurting economically at points. But the one thing we always remarked on was how much fun we had together during the pandemic. we felt guilty of how much of a good time we were having compared to anyone else. And he like we just had such a good time together. Basically, he literally, I remember talking to him the night before I was gonna go on the date with my wife, with who would become my wife a few years after that. And I was so nervous, and he was giving me advice, and we were just like in his room watching shows or playing video games, just the cool stuff that we used to do. And that's the thing, we used to share so many interests. We still do, obviously, so many hobbies. We're each our own different people. Hold on, let me turn off the music down a bit. We're obviously our own different people. We have different interests, but we have so many interests in common, and we just have so many shared memories and shared, what's the word I'm looking for, like inside jokes, like inner circle jokes. Imagine we're dark angels, and we're both part of the inner circle, so there's some knowledge that only each other have access to, only a select group of people will have access to. So we just like shared so many things in common, and we shared just enough, I guess, to be friends, and we were just different enough from each other to remain good friends, because sometimes similar personalities will clash with each other. And you may be thinking, what the hell does this have to do with hobbies? Well, I don't know if it's only me. I have a feeling that I'm not the only one, but I've been feeling lately like things are gonna start to get more chaotic. I have a pretty good intuition for this sort of thing. It may just be projection. I'm not claiming any sort of supernatural power, none that I would disclose, but it may just be projection. But because my life has been very chaotic, and I've gone through some dark moments recently in my life, but I felt a lot of pressure to leave my hobbies to the side, to stop focusing so much in the things that I do for joy, not for productivity necessarily, just for for joy, to explore my creativity, to have a good time. And obviously now I've since moved to Canada a few years ago, and I've started a new life. So I've lost touch with a lot of friends, and I've actually had somewhat somewhat of a hard time making new friends in the hobby space. Like most of my friends are from work, but I did meet a nice, really nice, really fun D&D group, for example, right? And we get together now and then and play D&D, but also people in this group have become like reliable friends that I can call upon and share a good joke with. And in times of chaos, it may be tempting to be like to just feel completely drained, completely unmotivated. Sometimes, when they hit you up for a D&D session or whatever, you may feel tempted to just be like, no, I'd rather stay home, or I'd rather do some overtime at work, because what's even the point? I'm gonna need more money. Things are gonna get worse anyways. We gotta be prepared, or maybe perhaps you're just completely unmotivated, which is something that I did go through in Norgol's Plague as well, because of all the things that I already mentioned and a bunch more that I have not mentioned. I am not liking my hatching on this plate whatsoever. Okay, what would this plate look like? First of all, the perspective seems to be all wrong, sorry. This line should come down here. But anyways, for example, this drawing, I have very little, days like today, very little motivation to draw. I'm very, very tired from work, and I'm only gonna get more tired as the week goes by. But I'm investing time in a skill that I want to develop. I'm investing time and effort in myself, basically. I'm sowing seeds of creativity. Sometimes I cannot stop myself from drawing. Sometimes I really just want to come home and draw, or do something creative. Sometimes I'm not feeling it, right? But that's how I ended up, and that's how we end up, rather, doing things that we don't love in life, because we run away from the things that perhaps we would have loved more, because they had some aspects to them that sucked a little, or they didn't seem productive enough. And well, maybe they just never became quite productive enough, precisely because we were afraid to we weren't disciplined enough, or we didn't believe in ourselves enough to actually just push through and stick with them. And that applies to hobbies as well. And I'm not only talking about like any sort of political situation going on, I'm also talking about technology. There is currently a lot of talk about job security and how that may change in the next few years because of AI mainly, and the capabilities of AI, which to most people are still unknown. To some of the people working on it, they still don't know exactly what it's going to look like in a few years, or at least they don't want to say. It may all just be a bubble that may burst at any point, or it may not, and it may actually just come in and switch things up for everyone, and just a lot of people may just lose their jobs or whatever. So the reason I'm bringing this up is not to fearmonger or any sort of thing like that. It's more like to tell you, in the end, we can't really predict what's gonna happen, and people can take, not people necessarily, I don't want to talk about like people per se. It's more like we don't really control everything that happens to us in life, but we control to an extent what we do with our time in life. And what better way than to invest it in something that you love, And when I say hobbies, I don't mean necessarily like, oh, painting or playing Warhammer or D&D or drawing or going to the gym, but I mean all of those things together. I think a healthy hobby actually has the potential. Something that, again, you do not because you want to be productive, but because you want to be... you want to service yourself, so to speak. That sounds weird. Oh, I just heard it. You want to take care of yourself in a certain way. You want to do things for yourself, to remind yourself that you're not here to work. You're not here to pay bills. You're not here to keep people happy. All of that has to be a byproduct of you just being here and acting out your own will upon the world in a healthy, balanced way, and growing up and maturing in a healthy and courageous way. And courageous is a very important word that I will drop all the time, because you have to be courageous to pursue your hobbies. I've been a coward in many things in my hobbies, and partly me opening this channel is me pushing myself to face some of those fears. I at some point I gotta walk into a hobby store and play with strangers and not just friends. At some point I gotta paint that miniature that I've been dreading to paint because it's such a cool model, and I don't want to ruin it with my subpar, mediocre painting skills. But it takes courage to grow as well. It takes courage to take on a project this big, which I spent months drawing, and I'm not done through. I'm not even halfway done through it yet. It takes a lot of courage because I can't make money out of this. I don't think people are willing to pay for this, at least not at this point in my life. But regardless, pursuing your hobbies, you get to know more of yourself. You get to know more of people, more people. Sorry. And going back to my whole story with my friend, is our hobbies in many ways were what drew us together, because we had so many things that we could share with each other, and we could share it in such a way that it just enriched our lives and enriched our friendship. And through this friend, I met so many more cool people, and through me, he met cool people as well, and we both learned of each other's like hobbies. Like I wouldn't shut up about Warhammer, for example, and he wouldn't shut up about 3D printing, and now I'm like, oh, you can 3D print stuff for wargaming as well, right? So, you know, life, you can't really predict where it's gonna take you, but this sounds extremely cheesy and cliche, but if you're working on yourself, it's less important what happens to you, and it's more important like how you navigate it. Now, I want to address the practicality of actually pursuing your hobbies in at a time like this, sorry, when again going back to the whole job security situation with AI and the geopolitical conflicts and so on and so on and so on and so on, and the economy and the markets and everything that happens in the world. I think it's very natural to give in to panic and chaos, not the Warhammer chaos, but just actual real life chaos. You never know when something that you were doing just as a hobby will further down the road open the doors for you. um well, it will open doors for you, basically. It will open opportunities for you. It will present more opportunities in the future, because most hobbies are actually a skill. Any hobby that you pursue with discipline and with courage and in a healthy way, with some level of consistency. And I'm the worst at this because I have a billion things that I like, right? I like martial arts, I like painting miniatures, I like reading, I like drawing, I love video games, I love my wife, I love my pets, I do like to work, I do like to go to the gym, I like fencing, I like all sorts of things. So obviously I have to sacrifice some things. I can't just do everything, right? That's just a dream. If only I had 3 more lifetimes, if the day lasted 3 times as long. But anyways, you are developing skills as well, and you never know when those skills may open up opportunities for you in your life, even financial opportunities. There is money to be made in almost anything that you become good at, and that basically anything that there is a demand for. It's just at this point it is very hard to predict what there is gonna be a demand for in the next 10 to 15 years. So, let's say you invest a lot of your time and effort into, let's talk about wargaming, into painting miniatures and playing with friends. And let's say, there is never an opportunity in your life where you might be able to make a living out of that, or make some money, or I don't know, get a side hustle out of it. if you still throughout the years painted a bunch of miniatures, had a blast with your friends, playing with your friends, or have some fun memories, that is the one thing that no one can take from you. Only yourself, basically, or some very very uh, hard head trauma, perhaps. Those are things that people can't take from you. And take it as someone who has been very nomadic throughout his life. Again, I've lived in 4 countries, and not only I've been nomadic in where I've lived in, but also the types of lives that I've lived. I've led many different types of lives, and I've had to start over many times throughout my life. But the one thing that people really can't take from me are my good memories, the good times that I had. Even the bad times, even the bad memories, if you let them disappear, eventually they just fade into the background. And I'm not talking here about like staying in the past and just chasing a dragon of how you used to feel. No, it's good to continue doing on new things. Just remember how you felt and don't chase that feeling. Just remember what happened before you felt that way. You were probably passionate about something. You probably invested time and effort into something and you felt rewarded. And if that is a hobby, if that is a friendship, if that is a skill, I think these are all things that can come together. Just like I gave you the example of my friend, how all these things, our hobbies, our friendships, our jobs, our professions, our experience, we found a way to make it come together. And it just worked out amazingly for both of us. Until this day, if I call him, I'll be like, hey, do you remember what a blast we had during those years of Nurgle's Plague? And he'll be like, oh, we we should have a blast. And we'll joke, we'll be like, oh, we were happy and we didn't know it. But the truth is, we did know it. We constantly made remarks on how happy we were. So, yeah, I don't want this video to go on forever. I've talked, as usual, longer than I wanted to. But that's a lie. I want to talk a lot longer, but than I intended to for the purposes of YouTube and the discoverability of my videos. But I would like to hear now from you. What's your take on this? Do you have any any opinions on whether when it's better to prioritize your hobbies or to rather push away your hobbies? I will say I don't have kids. I'm 31 years old and I don't have any kids or people older than my wife that are like my direct responsibility. And my wife is a pretty self-sufficient person, way more than me sometimes. So obviously, granted, if I had kids, there's nothing that I wouldn't give for them, that I wouldn't like stop doing for them. But I imagine that at some point, if I just completely forgot about the stuff that I actually like doing, then what would I have to share with them? What skill would I pass on to them? What hobby would I pass on to them? And lastly, sorry, I will just say some of this translation with hobby is a bit hard for me because in Spanish, the word for hobby is pasatiempo, which is something that makes the time go by or something to do while the time goes by. And I think there is a lot of we can look a lot into that word, into pasatiempo. It's technically 2 words together. It's basically time goes by, and that's hobby. To me, okay, certainly people use it as like something to spend time with, like something to just do nothing, to waste time pretty much. To me, it's different. It's perhaps a bit more philosophical, that word in Spanish. It's not just something to pass the time, it's a reminder that time passes and we only have so long to live. Unfortunately, once again, I've as I've mentioned before, I've lost a lot of people. I don't want to like to say lost them because they're still with me, but they are no longer in this material realm with us. And unfortunately, a few more recently. And that is a constant reminder to me in my life, a constant memento mori that time goes by. No matter what you do with it, we only have a certain amount of it. Now, of course, you have responsibilities, and it's good to be a disciplined person. It's good to be productive. I certainly think so. But I would argue it's also good to be unproductive, and that's why I made this video. So, that being said, I would love to hear your opinions on the matter. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you're thinking of my drawing skills so far. If you think this is atrocious, horrendous, and I should never grab a pen and a tablet ever again, please let me know in the comments down below, and please share with me some of your favorite, most beautiful, or most horrendous, whatever it is, whatever sort of memories that left a mark with you, in you, with your hobbies or whatever it is. Feel free to share it in the comments down below. I would love to read it. So yeah, thanks for coming once again. Remember, ad astra, and there are no female custodies.